A man who walks alone does not do so out of necessity, nor out of loneliness, but because he has begun to see the great game for what it is. He has stepped quietly out of the noise, out of the pulling hands that seek to mold him into something useful, something acceptable, something predictable. He has seen the pattern that governs most lives, the endless repetition of wanting and fearing, of reaching and retreating, and he has decided, without bitterness, without pride, to step aside from it, not to escape but to see, to observe the current instead of being carried away by it. He walks alone, not because he despises others, but because he has learned to listen to the silence that most fear. In that silence, there is no applause, no approval, no validation, only the soft hum of existence itself. It is in that space between thoughts where he begins to see the world not as fragments, not as separate beings competing for meaning, but as a single unfolding moment, a vast breathing organism that includes him as much as he includes it. Most people fear being alone because they mistake silence for emptiness. They believe that without constant noise, they will disappear. So they fill the space with chatter, with plans, with ambition, hoping the echo of their own movement will reassure them that they are real. But the man who walks alone has discovered a deeper kind of presence, one that does not depend on recognition. He no longer fears the silence because he has met himself within it, and he has found that what he feared was not the silence, but his own reflection in it. When he first steps away, the world calls after him, voices rising with concern, with confusion, with judgment. They ask him where he is going, what he seeks, why he leaves. But he does not leave for a reason that can be explained. His journey is not a rebellion, nor a pilgrimage, but a return. A return to what has always been here, beneath the noise, beneath the names. He is not rejecting the world, only the distortion through which most people see it. And here lies the paradox. The more he embraces solitude, the less alone he becomes. For in silence, he begins to feel the pulse of all things, the whisper of wind weaving through the grass, the patient rhythm of the sea against the shore, the quiet heartbeat of the earth beneath his feet. He realizes that solitude is not separation, but connection in its purest form. When he stops trying to belong, he discovers he already does. He sees how the trees stand without envy, how the rivers flow without hesitation, how the stars shine without asking to be seen. They do not strive to be more than what they are. They simply are. And in that being, they express a harmony that no effort could produce. The man who walks alone begins to sense that same stillness within himself, the same effortless presence that does not need to prove its worth. He is not a recluse nor a wanderer in the sense the world imagines. He has not renounced the world. He has simply ceased to cling to it. He moves among people as one might move through a forest, seeing, listening, understanding, but not lost in the branches. He participates without possession. He observes without judgment. He belongs without attachment. Most men are terrified of being alone because in solitude, the masks begin to fall. In the stillness, the mind grows loud. The memories, the doubts, the unhealed wounds, all rise to the surface, demanding to be seen. But the man who walks alone does not resist them. He lets them pass like clouds across an open sky, knowing that what he truly is cannot be disturbed by what appears within him. There is a strange kind of freedom in this, an unspoken power that does not come from dominance, but from surrender. He no longer strives to control the flow of life, for he sees that the river flows with or without his effort. And in trusting it, he discovers that he, too, is the river. He walks without hurry, without destination, because he understands that every step is the journey itself. There is nowhere to arrive, no finish line to cross, no final revelation waiting at the end of the road. The meaning is in the movement, in the rhythm of breath and dust, in the quiet unfolding of each moment. The man who walks alone does not seek to be understood, for he knows that what he has seen cannot be translated into words. He does not try to convince, nor does he wish to be followed. He simply moves, steady and unshaken, guided not by ambition but by awareness. He has learned that solitude is not a punishment, but a mirror. In its reflection, he sees not who he should be, but who he has always been. The noise of the world once blurred that image, made it seem distant and unfamiliar. But now, as the noise fades, he recognizes himself again. Not as a name, not as a role, but as a simple presence. He no longer measures life by achievement or recognition. He no longer seeks to hold what cannot be held. Instead, he lets life flow through him as wind through leaves, touching, shaping, but never binding. And in that gentle release, he finds what most spend their lives searching for: peace. For the man who walks alone has not abandoned the world. He has only stopped trying to own it. He does not escape reality. He surrenders to it. And in that surrender, he discovers that what he once called solitude is not emptiness at all, but fullness, fullness of being, fullness of silence, fullness of everything that is. He walks and the road unfolds. He breathes and the world breathes with him. He does not know where the path leads, but he no longer needs to know. For wherever he is home. And in that realization, the man who walks alone has already arrived. The man who walks alone soon discovers that solitude is not a destination, but a landscape that keeps unfolding. At first, it seems quiet, even empty. But the more he walks, the more he notices its subtle life, the hidden movements beneath stillness, the delicate murmurs of existence that only silence can reveal. He begins to realize that the world has never been silent. It was only that he could not hear it through the constant roar of thought and expectation. He learns that solitude sharpens perception. The smallest things become immense, the shifting of light through leaves, the hum of air between spaces, the brief glance of a passing bird. These details, once buried beneath distraction, now speak to him with a language older than words. In their quiet persistence, he senses a wisdom that no philosophy could teach. He begins to understand that life in its purest form is not a concept to be grasped, but an experience to be entered fully. The road he walks is not made of stone or dirt. It is made of moments. Each one rises and falls like a wave, appearing, dissolving, then returning in a new shape. Sometimes the path is clear, wide, effortless. Other times it disappears into mist, and he must trust that the next step will reveal itself only when he takes it. This trust becomes his teacher. It shows him that uncertainty is not the enemy of peace. It is its foundation. Most people seek to control the unknown, to force clarity upon it. They build plans, goals, identities, as if these could protect them from the unpredictability of life. But the man who walks alone sees that control is just another disguise for fear. It is the attempt to hold the river still so that it will reflect his own face back at him. But a river that does not move becomes stagnant, and so he lets it flow. As he moves through silence, he begins to see his old self, the one shaped by others, by praise and rejection, by ambition and failure, slowly fade away. At first, this feels like a kind of death, but in that death, there is liberation. What remains is something quieter, truer. He realizes that most of what he once called himself was nothing more than a collection of borrowed ideas, beliefs adopted to fit into a world that never truly knew him. In solitude, those ideas fall away. He no longer needs to be anyone in particular. He no longer measures his worth by his usefulness or by how well he performs the role expected of him. The man who walks alone does not reject his past, but he no longer lets it define him. He moves lightly, unburdened by the weight of memory. There is a certain clarity that comes when one stops defending an image. He begins to feel life directly, without the filters of opinion or comparison. The rain no longer means sadness. The sun no longer means joy. Both are simply expressions of the same movement. And within him, that same movement continues, sometimes soft, sometimes fierce, but always real. He notices how the world seems to respond to his stillness. Animals are less afraid. People sense the calm that surrounds him without knowing why. He does not try to influence anyone, but his presence carries a quiet gravity. It is not power in the conventional sense. It is the absence of struggle, the absence of the constant need to prove. And in that absence, there is a deep kind of peace. When he looks back at the life he left behind, the noise, the pursuit, the endless search for meaning, he does not condemn it. He understands it. He sees that everyone is walking the same path, though most are running, trying to arrive before they even know where they are going. He once did the same, but somewhere along the way, he stopped. He looked around, and in that stillness, he realized that there was nowhere else to go. Freedom, he discovers, is not the ability to have everything, but the understanding that nothing needs to be added. It is not detachment in the cold sense, but a gentle awareness that everything changes, that every connection, every possession, every feeling is a wave on the same ocean. Trying to hold them is like trying to cage the wind. As he walks, he no longer counts the distance or wonders how far he has come. Time begins to lose its usual shape. Days blur into nights and nights into dawns, each carrying the same quiet rhythm. The journey becomes circular, without beginning or end, as if he were walking not through space, but through understanding itself. He begins to see that solitude does not isolate him from the world. It dissolves the illusion that there was ever a boundary between him and everything else. The wind that moves through the trees moves through him. The stars that shimmer in the dark sky do not merely shine above him. They exist within the same vast silence that beats in his chest. He walks not to find answers, but to stop needing them. And in that surrender, he finds something greater than certainty. Peace. Not the peace of perfection, but the peace of acceptance. The kind that arrives quietly, like a tide coming home. The man who walks alone is not lonely. He is listening. Listening to the faint murmur of the universe speaking through all things, through every shadow and gust of wind, through every heartbeat that echoes in his chest. He walks because there is no longer a separation between him and the road. He is not moving through the world. He is moving with it. And in that movement, he has found what he did not even know he was seeking, to simply be. The man who walks alone soon discovers that solitude changes the texture of time. What once felt rushed and mechanical now breathes with a slower rhythm. Mornings no longer arrive with the weight of obligation, and nights no longer end in restless thought. Each hour stretches gently, unfolding not as something to be used, but as something to be witnessed. There is no schedule, no finish line, only the quiet continuity of being alive. He begins to notice how deeply people depend on movement, not the physical kind, but the psychological rush of always going somewhere, always chasing after the next thing. It is not ambition that drives them, but fear. Fear of stillness, of the moment when nothing external can distract them from what lies within. He used to be one of them, constantly running from silence, convinced that if he stopped, everything he was would crumble. But now he knows that silence does not destroy, it reveals. In solitude, he starts to see how many layers of noise he had built around himself, opinions he adopted to belong, habits he maintained to be accepted, dreams that were not his but passed down to him like family heirlooms. As he peels them away, he finds something startlingly simple beneath it all, a presence that has always been there, unnoticed, waiting. It is not grand or dramatic. It is quiet, like the steady pulse of the earth underfoot. He realizes that this simplicity is what the world has forgotten. People complicate life because complexity gives them a sense of control. If they can define, label, and structure everything, they believe they can manage the chaos. But the man who walks alone understands that true order does not come from control. It comes from harmony. It is the kind of order that a river follows, not by resisting its course, but by moving with it. Sometimes he passes through towns or crosses paths with others. They look at him with curiosity, some with pity, others with quiet envy. They ask him where he is headed, and he often smiles, unsure how to answer. How does one explain a journey that is not toward a destination, but deeper into the present? For most, life is a line: birth, work, achievement, death. But for him, it has become a circle, complete in every step. He notices that solitude softens him, not hardens him as one might expect. Without the need to defend himself, he becomes gentler, more receptive. His thoughts slow down, his speech becomes deliberate, his movements less hurried. He listens, truly listens, not to respond, but to understand. The smallest gestures of life speak volumes to him, the way a leaf trembles before falling, the sound of footsteps fading on a quiet road, the faint crackle of wood in the evening air. Each sound, each movement seems to echo a truth too subtle for words. In those moments, he realizes how much of life is lost in the noise of striving. People are so busy trying to become something that they forget how to simply exist. They measure their worth through comparison, through competition, through validation. And in doing so, they turn life into a battlefield of constant proving. The man who walks alone has stepped away from that war. He no longer fights for an identity. He allows himself to be a mystery, even to himself. There are days when the path feels endless, when loneliness brushes against him like a shadow. Yet even in those moments, he does not retreat. He has learned that discomfort is not a sign of error. It is the threshold of understanding. When he stops resisting it, when he allows the ache of solitude to be felt fully, it transforms. The loneliness turns into stillness, and the stillness opens into clarity. He sees that every feeling, no matter how heavy, carries its own wisdom if one is patient enough to listen. He begins to understand the true nature of freedom. It is not the absence of ties or responsibility, but the absence of fear. The man who walks alone still cares, still loves, still feels deeply, but he does not cling. Love to him is no longer possession, it is recognition. To love something deeply is to allow it to be as it is, without trying to bind it to your will. This understanding reshapes how he moves through the world. Every encounter, every fleeting connection becomes complete in itself, needing nothing beyond the moment it exists in. He often finds himself walking at dusk when the sky fades from gold to violet and the air carries the scent of rain. These hours feel sacred, as if the world itself is holding its breath. In that twilight silence, he feels closest to the truth of things, that nothing truly ends, that every disappearance is only a change of form. The light does not die, it transforms. And so does he again and again with each step. He no longer seeks certainty. Certainty, he realizes, is a cage. It offers comfort, but at the cost of freedom. The more people cling to what they think they know, the less they can see. He prefers mystery now, the open-endedness of life, the way every answer gives birth to another question. Mystery does not frighten him anymore. It humbles him. It teaches him to bow before the unknown, to see wonder where he once sought control. And in that wonder, he finds belonging. Not the belonging of the crowd, but the belonging of existence itself. He feels it in the pulse of the ground, in the rhythm of breath, in the echo of distant thunder. He belongs not because he fits, but because he is. That realization fills him with a quiet joy that no success or recognition could ever match. The man who walks alone continues forward, not because he seeks something ahead, but because walking is his way of listening, of understanding, of remembering what it means to be alive. He walks because every step reminds him that he is part of something vast, something eternal, something that needs no name. As the man continues his walk, something within him begins to change, subtly at first, almost imperceptibly. The silence that once surrounded him as a companion now becomes something else, a teacher. It does not speak in words, but through the language of absence. It asks him to look without seeking, to listen without naming, to feel without claiming ownership over what he feels. He starts to notice how everything in the world moves according to its own rhythm, untouched by the urgency that rules human life. A tree does not hurry to grow. The sea does not rush to reach the shore. Even decay has its own grace, its own tempo. There is no resistance in nature, only unfolding. He realizes that most suffering comes from the desire to make life move faster or slower than it naturally does. He remembers the man he once was, always measuring progress, defining worth by milestones, terrified of standing still. Now, standing still has become his greatest revelation. When he stops, the world no longer rushes past him. It meets him. He feels the vastness of existence not as something external, but as something that breathes through him. Every inhale feels like an echo of creation itself. Every exhale a surrender to the rhythm of the whole. He begins to understand that solitude is not a withdrawal, but a return. He has not left the world. He has re-entered it without distraction. Most people mistake participation for connection. They surround themselves with noise, with endless conversation and motion, believing that to be still is to be lifeless. But he sees now that stillness is not the absence of life. It is where life becomes visible. It is in stillness that the smallest truths are revealed. The way light shifts through a window, the quiet pulse of one's own heartbeat, the impermanence of a single breath. Sometimes he watches others move about their lives, talking, planning, arguing, laughing. He no longer judges, but he recognizes the rhythm of it, the pattern of wanting and fearing, building and breaking. He knows that everyone, in their own way, is searching for the same thing, peace. They look for it in love, in power, in belonging, but rarely in themselves. He understands now that peace cannot be found by adding more to life, but by removing what obscures it. He sees that freedom is not a grand event. It is quiet, almost invisible. It happens when a man no longer needs to justify his existence. when he stops asking permission to be who he already is. That is when his actions, his words, his very breath begin to align with something larger than his own will. This realization brings with it a profound humility. He no longer feels separate from the people he once tried to surpass. The arrogance that once hid inside his pursuit of independence dissolves. He sees that walking alone is not an act of superiority, but of equality. He walks as everything walks, without title, without destination, without demand. There are moments when the old restlessness returns, whispering that he should be doing more, proving more, becoming more. Those are the ghosts of his former life, the echoes of a mind trained to mistake movement for meaning. But he does not fight them. He lets them rise, linger, and fade. He has learned that resistance only strengthens illusion. What is accepted passes through effortlessly. He finds that solitude is not isolation from the world, it is intimacy with it. He begins to sense a connection so subtle it cannot be explained, only felt. When he looks at a mountain, he feels its stillness in his bone. When he hears the wind, it is as though it moves through him rather than around him. He realizes that separation was never real. It was only a habit of perception. The boundaries between self and world dissolve like mist in morning light. He has also begun to see that truth is not a conclusion, but an atmosphere. It does not appear as a single revelation, but as a clarity that quietly infuses everything. Truth is what remains when nothing more can be taken away. It is not something found, it is something uncovered, like the light beneath dust. The man who walks alone does not need to explain his journey anymore, not even to himself. Explanations belong to the world of comparison, where meaning is traded like currency. He is no longer part of that economy. He does not measure experiences as success or failure, gain or loss. He simply witnesses their rise and fall like the tide's eternal breathing. On some days, the sky opens wide and blue, and he feels weightless, as though the entire world moves within him. On others, the clouds hang low, and everything feels heavy, even his steps. But both are the same to him now, expressions of one vast life. He does not cling to the clear days, nor does he reject the storms. He understands that both belong to the same sky. As he walks, he begins to feel gratitude, not the kind that requires reason, but a quiet appreciation for the simple fact of existing. He is grateful for the silence that once frightened him, for it has become his guide. He is grateful for the uncertainty, because it taught him to trust. And he is grateful for the solitude, because it revealed to him that he was never truly alone. And perhaps this is the greatest secret of all, that the man who walks alone has not found something new, but remembered something forgotten, that beneath the noise, beneath the striving and the masks, there has always been this still living presence. It does not demand attention, it does not boast, it simply is. So he keeps walking, not away from the world, but deeper into it. Each step dissolves another illusion, another boundary, until there is nothing left to separate him from the road beneath his feet. He no longer walks through the world, he walks as it. And in that seamless union, the journey and the traveler become one. There comes a moment, as the man walks further into solitude, when he realizes that the silence he once welcomed now begins to reveal its sharper edges. It is not always kind. Silence can be like a mirror that shows everything one has tried not to see. Old memories rise like dust disturbed by light. The mistakes, the regrets, the things said in anger, the times he betrayed his own nature just to belong. In the stillness, there is no place to hide from them. They come without mercy, yet without intention to harm. They simply appear, as truth always does, when there is no longer noise to keep it buried. For a while, this revelation unsettles him. He wonders if he has made a mistake, if perhaps solitude is not liberation, but exile. He feels the temptation to turn back, to return to the comfort of distraction, to drown these echoes beneath the weight of other voices. But something within him knows that to flee would be to undo everything the road has taught him. And so he stays, he listens, and little by little, the pain loses its sharp. The memories, once heavy, begin to dissolve into understanding. He learns that forgiveness is not an act of will, nor a declaration of virtue. It is a natural consequence of seeing clearly. When he looks at his past self, he no longer sees failure. He sees someone trying, someone learning, someone lost in the same confusion that blinds most of the world. He realizes that all cruelty, all greed, all error come from the same root, forgetfulness, the forgetting of what we are. When a man forgets that he is part of the whole, he begins to grasp and fight and hurt. To remember is to forgive, because one sees that there was never truly a separation to begin with. The silence continues to teach him in ways that words never could. He discovers that wisdom does not come from collecting ideas, but from the quiet erosion of certainty. Every conclusion he once held dear begins to crumble, and in its place grows something simpler, a kind of direct knowing, not of facts, but of present. He no longer needs to define what life is. He feels it moving through him. He also learns that solitude does not mean absence of relationship. It transforms it. When he meets others now, he sees them not as roles or reflections, but as beings caught in the same vast mystery. He listens without agenda, without the urge to reply or correct. Sometimes he says nothing at all, and in that space something genuine passes between them, a recognition, silent but undeniable, of shared existence. He notices how rare this kind of connection is in the world. Most conversations, he realizes, are transactions, exchanges of validation, of reassurance, of subtle manipulation. People rarely speak to understand. They speak to maintain their identity. But when one stops needing to be someone, dialogue becomes communion. He finds himself speaking less, yet saying more. And often, silence says everything. His days become simpler. He rises with the light, walks until the body asks for rest, eats when hunger comes, sleeps when tiredness settles in. There is no drama, no resistance. Even discomfort has lost its hostility. Rain is rain, cold is cold, hunger is hunger. None of these are enemies. He has discovered that the suffering of life is not in what happens, but in what one adds to it. The stories, the expectations, the resistance. When those fall away, life is neither cruel nor kind. It simply is, and that, he finds, is enough. There are moments when he catches himself smiling without reason, not the forced smile of politeness, but the spontaneous kind that rises from recognition, the recognition that to exist at all is miraculous. The wind brushing his face, the sound of leaves scattering underfoot, the warmth of sun after a long night, all of it feels like a quiet celebration. He no longer needs purpose in the way he once did. The word itself has lost meaning. Purpose had always implied an end, a direction, a point beyond the present. Now he sees that life has no goal outside itself. A bird does not sing for meaning. It sings because the song is what life does through it. In that same way, he walks. The walking is not toward something. It is the expression of life through him. Sometimes, when dusk falls, he sits and watches the horizon fade. He wonders how much of what people call growth is just the slow process of unlearning, the peeling away of everything false until only the essential remains. He thinks of how much energy humans waste trying to hold the unholdable, how they chase permanence in a world made of change. He too once did, but now he finds beauty in impermanence. It no longer feels like loss, it feels like rhythm. He begins to understand that everything he once feared, loneliness, uncertainty, death, were not enemies, but invitation. Loneliness was the call to meet himself. Uncertainty was the reminder that life cannot be owned. And death, the most misunderstood of all, is not an end, but a return, the same return he feels in every breath when he exhales and the body lets go. In one quiet moment, as he watches the stars bloom across the night sky, he feels the weight of everything fall away. The past, the future, even the sense of I. There is only awareness, vast and silent. He is not thinking about the stars. He is the same stillness from which they shine. He realizes then that the journey has never been about walking away from the world, but about walking out of the illusion of being separate from it. And as he rises to continue on, he does not think of how far he has come or how far he must go. The road, the walker, the destination, they are one and the same. He simply walks, not toward anything, but as part of the great motion that has no beginning and no end. And in that endless movement, he finally understands what it means to be free. As the man continues his solitary journey, he begins to notice that the world around him has changed, or perhaps it is he who has changed, and the world simply reveals itself differently now. Everything seems quieter, yet more alive. Even the smallest gestures of existence, the flicker of fireflies at dusk, the whisper of the wind moving through tall grass, the distant rhythm of waves, feel deliberate, as though the universe itself is breathing in unison. It is not that life has become clearer, but that he has stopped demanding clarity, and in that surrender, everything begins to speak. He no longer feels like an observer walking through a landscape. He feels more like a pulse within the body of the earth, inseparable from it. This realization does not come as a thought, but as a sensation, a weightless certainty, born not from reason, but from awareness. The boundaries between self and world dissolve, and with them, the constant tension of needing to protect, prove, or pursue anything. He understands now that what he used to call life was mostly resistance to it. In solitude, he learns the difference between peace and escape. To run away from the world is easy. To stand still within it, without being consumed, takes a deeper courage. He knows that many who seek solitude do so out of bitterness, as a rejection of others. But his solitude is not rebellion. It is reconciliation. He is not hiding from life. He is allowing it to be what it is, without forcing it to serve his expectations. He recalls the endless striving of his former life, the hunger for validation, the constant search for significance. Every success brought momentary relief, but never rest. Now rest has become his natural state, not laziness, but a quiet aliveness that requires no justification. He no longer feels the need to prove his existence through achievement. Existence itself is enough. There are times, walking beneath an open sky, when he feels an overwhelming sense of belonging, not to any place or purpose, but to everything. The air feels like home. The horizon feels like an extension of his own breath. And for the first time, he understands that belonging is not something one earns by fitting in. It is something one remembers by letting go. He begins to see that most of humanity's suffering comes from forgetfulness, the forgetting of this simple truth, that we are not separate from life, but expressions of it. People build walls, draw lines, name things, and then spend their lives defending those inventions. They divide the world into me and you, us and them, and in doing so, they create the very pain they fear. The man who walks alone has stopped drawing lines. He no longer defines himself by contrast, and so conflict no longer has a place to take root within him. Still, solitude does not mean absence of emotion. There are moments when sadness arrives, uninvited but welcome. It does not crush him as it once did. It moves through him like rain through the branches. He has learned that emotions are not problems to be solved, but currents to be felt. To resist them is to suffer. To let them pass is to understand. And in that understanding, he finds that even sorrow has its own kind of beauty, a reminder that the heart is alive. Sometimes when he crosses paths with others, he feels their unrest before they even speak. He senses the tension in their bodies, the weight of their thoughts, the noise they carry within. He listens, not with pity, but with compassion. He knows that each person is walking their own invisible path through the same vastness. They may not yet see what he has seen, but they are part of the same unfolding. He no longer feels the need to change anyone. He understands that every soul awakens in its own time. His solitude has made him sensitive to the subtleties of existence. He feels the way energy moves through all things, the cycles of expansion and contraction, the quiet intelligence that guides even the smallest seed toward the light. There is no accident in this rhythm. Everything belongs to it, the birth and decay, the joy and the loss. He realizes that to resist change is to resist life itself. As he walks through forests and across valleys, he becomes aware of how little the world demands of him. It asks for nothing but presence. The trees do not care about his story. The wind does not ask his name. The world does not seek to impress or to please. It simply exists in its own effortless perfection. And in witnessing this, he learns to exist the same way. He begins to notice that silence has a texture. It is not an empty void, but a living field, dense, resonant, filled with possibility. In silence, he senses the movement of thought before it becomes word, the flicker of intention before it becomes action. It is as though he can hear life forming itself in real time. This awareness deepens his patience. Nothing needs to be forced. Everything arrives when it must. He understands now that wisdom is not in knowing more, but in needing less. The less he seeks to possess, ideas, people, outcomes, the lighter his steps become. He walks not to reach, but to remember. Each step reminds him that life has always been simple. It is the mind that makes it complicated. There are moments when he stands still and feels an almost childlike wonder at being alive. He no longer analyzes it. He no longer tries to translate it into meaning. The wonder itself is meaning. The world, stripped of its labels and purposes, reveals itself as pure mystery. And in that mystery, he finds freedom, not from life, but within it. He realizes that true solitude is not about being apart from others. It is about being whole within oneself. When a man becomes whole, he no longer depends on anything external to confirm his existence. He can love without clinging, give without loss, and stand among the noise of the world without being drawn into it. Solitude, then, is not the absence of company. It is the presence of completeness. And so he continues to walk, not as a seeker, but as one who has stopped seeking. Each step is both movement and stillness, both journey and arrival. The road ahead is infinite, yet he feels no need to reach its end. The sky above him opens without limit, and he smiles, not because he understands it, but because he no longer needs to. The man who walks alone does not walk toward peace. He walks as peace itself, quiet, grounded, and endlessly awake. The man has walked for so long now that distance itself has lost its meaning. The rhythm of his steps has become a quiet conversation with the world, a dialogue without words. Each movement feels less like progress and more like participation. He no longer walks through places. He moves with them, as if his body were just another element in nature's choreography. It is here, in this seamless flow, that he begins to understand something deeper about freedom, not as escape, but as integration. There was a time when freedom meant breaking away, tearing down walls, leaving everything behind. But now he sees that freedom is not rebellion, it is acceptance. The highest form of independence is harmony, not isolation. He no longer defines himself by opposition to the world, because there is nothing left to oppose. Everything that once felt separate, the earth beneath him, the wind against his skin, the quiet pulse of his own heart, moves according to the same rhythm. He begins to see how most people mistake movement for progress and noise for significance. The world, he realizes, is obsessed with urgency, always measuring, comparing, rushing towards something undefined. People call it purpose, ambition, productivity. But beneath it all, it is fear, fear of stillness, fear of silence, fear of the unknown self that waits patiently beneath all the doing. He knows this fear well. It once drove him too. But somewhere along the road, he stopped running from it and allowed it to speak. What it told him was simple. There is nothing to become. Everything that matters is already here. From that moment on, the chase ended. And with it, so did the exhaustion that comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. Now he moves with a kind of quiet confidence, not the confidence of certainty, but of trust. Trust in the unfolding of life, in the intelligence of things as they are. Sometimes, as he walks through unfamiliar lands, he observes the people who cross his path. They live tightly wound around their thoughts, their expressions marked by an invisible weight. They talk about the future as if it were a place they must earn the right to reach, and about the past as if it still holds them prisoner. Rarely do they inhabit the present moment fully. It's as though they live in a house with open doors but never step outside. He no longer feels the need to correct them, nor to pity them. He sees himself in their eyes, the same confusion he once carried. He understands that every soul awakens in its own time, through its own collisions and losses. No lesson can be forced on another. The truth reveals itself when one has become quiet enough to listen. In solitude, he has also come to see that enlightenment, the word so many chase, is not a mountain peak to be reached. It is the simple awareness that there is no peak at all. There is only the climb, the breath, the wind. The idea of enlightenment dissolves once the seeking mind dissolves. For when there is no seeker, what remains is what has always been, this vast, unnameable present. He reflects on the strange paradox of the world, how people crave connection, yet fear exposure, how they cling to identities that imprison them, mistaking armor for authenticity. He has learned that to be truly alive, one must be willing to be vulnerable, to stand before life without defense, to let experience pass through without resistance. This openness, once terrifying, has become his strength. To be undefended is to be untouchable, not because nothing can reach you, but because everything can. The seasons change around him. but he no longer marks them by calendars or expectations. Time has softened. It no longer feels like a line, but like a circle, an eternal returning. Every dawn feels like the first, every night like a completion. He sees that beginnings and endings are only different names for the same motion. Even death, he suspects, is not an end, but another turn in the same infinite rhythm. The man has stopped asking questions that demand answers. Instead, he asks questions that deepen his silence. What is this breath? What is this seeing? What is this life that moves through me? These questions do not lead to conclusions, but to wonder. And wonder, he realizes, is the purest form of prayer, the kind that asks for nothing, yet receives everything. There are moments, rare but profound, when he feels as though the boundary between observer and observed completely disappears. In those moments, there is no he walking, no world being walked through, only motion, pure and unbroken. It is impossible to describe, yet unmistakable when it happens. The mind tries to label it peace, enlightenment, union, but those words are only shadows of what truly occurs. And yet, he knows this state is not something to hold on to. The moment one tries to keep it, it vanishes. So he lets it come and go as naturally as breath. There is no need to preserve what cannot be lost. Sometimes, when night falls and the stars unfold like a slow exhale across the dark, he sits and thinks about how simple everything really is. He wonders how the world became so afraid of simplicity. We've built entire civilizations upon the illusion that complexity means importance, that busyness means life. But the stars do nothing. They simply shine, and that is enough. He has learned to see himself the same way. There is nothing to add, nothing to improve, nothing to fix. His value is not in what he does, but in what he is. The discovery is both humbling and liberating. That being alive in itself is the ultimate act of participation in the universe. He knows now that peace does not arrive with the end of struggle. Peace appears the moment one stops struggling against what is. It is not something gained through control, but something revealed through surrender. And so, he surrenders, not in defeat, but in recognition that he was never separate from the flow he once tried to master. He walks on, not as a pilgrim seeking a sacred place, but as a living expression of the sacred itself. The earth beneath him, the wind before him, the stars above, they are not destinations or symbols. They are his reflection, his reminder, his companions. And if you were to see him from afar, you would not know he had found anything extraordinary. His walk is slow, ordinary, unremarkable. But in that simplicity lies a vastness few ever touch. For the man who walks alone no longer needs the world to see him. He has finally learned to see himself in all things. As the man walks deeper into his journey, the world around him grows quieter, not because it has changed, but because his need to interpret it has faded. He no longer filters every sight and sound through meaning. The song of the wind no longer asks to be understood. It simply moves through him, and he lets it. The road ahead holds no promise of revelation, no hidden secret waiting to be uncovered, and yet every step feels sacred. There is a serenity in this simplicity, a weightless clarity that no achievement could ever provide. He begins to see that all of existence moves with a kind of effortless intelligence. Rivers bend precisely where they must. Trees stretch exactly as far as light allows. Clouds form and dissolve without a plan. The world is spontaneous but never chaotic. Its perfection lies in its unpredictability. He realizes then that human suffering arises from the refusal to trust this spontaneity, from the mind's relentless attempt to design a life that should have been lived instead of living the one that is. He used to believe that wisdom was a matter of gathering answers, but now he sees it as the quiet art of releasing questions. What remains when the need to know dissolves is not ignorance, it is intimacy. Without judgment, without analysis, he feels closer to life than ever before. He no longer stands apart as an observer. He is inside the movement, as inseparable from it as flame from fire. The man begins to recognize how much energy humanity wastes in pretending. Everywhere he goes, he sees people performing, their voices rehearsed, their gestures borrowed, their identities patched together from what others expect of them. They wear masks so convincingly that even they have forgotten the face beneath. He remembers when he too lived that way, building a self like a fragile monument, terrified it might crumble if someone looked too closely. Now, stripped of pretense, he has nothing left to protect, and therefore nothing left to fear. Freedom, he understands, does not come from having choices, but from no longer needing them. Once, every decision felt like a test of identity. What kind of man am I? What should I do to prove it? Now there is no such question. Whatever arises, arises. He acts, not because of a role he must fulfill, but because the moment calls for it. The simplicity of this is disarming. He does not analyze his every move, nor does he project meaning onto it. When hunger appears, he eats. When fatigue comes, he rests. When compassion stirs, he acts. Life, he realizes, takes care of itself when one stops trying to be in charge of it. And yet, there are moments when a subtle melancholy visits him, not sadness exactly, but a tender recognition of impermanence. He sees how even beauty carries within it the seed of disappearance, the sunset that fades, the laughter that falls silent, the face of a stranger passing into memory. He no longer fights this, he honors it. The fleeting nature of things no longer feels like a wound, but like a revelation. The fact that everything ends is what makes everything precious. Sometimes, as he walks through villages or sits beside fires shared with travelers, people ask him who he is, where he's from, where he's headed. He smiles because the truth cannot be contained in an answer. He gives them something simple, a name, a place, a vague destination. But within himself, he knows he belongs to none of these. His identity has become fluid, like the air passing through the world, touching everything but claiming nothing. He finds it fascinating how desperately people cling to their names, their histories, their titles, as if those fragile stories could preserve them from vanishing. They spend their lives polishing an image that time will inevitably erase. The man no longer fears that erasure. To be forgotten is not tragedy, it is return. He sees now that memory itself is an illusion, a fragile bridge between moments that were never separate to begin with. When the need to be remembered dies, what remains is peace. His relationship with time has softened too. The past no longer weighs on him. The future no longer pulls. Both exist as ripples in the same pond, appearing and fading within the vastness of now. He does not live in the present as an idea. He is the present, indivisible from it. Every breath feels like the first and the last, complete in itself. At times he encounters those who mistake his stillness for detachment. They assume he feels nothing, that his calm is indifference. But they are wrong. He feels everything now, more deeply than he ever did before. What has changed is not the feeling, but the need to possess it. Joy does not have to be held, nor sorrow resisted. Both are waves rising and falling within the same ocean. The man begins to understand that love, too, has been misunderstood. Love is not attachment, not possession, not the merging of two incomplete beings seeking wholeness in each other. True love, he sees, is seeing clearly, recognizing the same life shining through another form. It asks for nothing, it promises nothing, yet it gives everything. He has loved and lost, and now he knows that loss does not cancel love. It completes it. Each day, as the road stretches before him, he feels lighter. Not because life has become easier, but because he no longer drags himself behind it. He has stopped demanding permanence from a world that is always in motion. This surrender does not make him passive. It makes him alive in a way he never knew possible. His mind has grown quiet enough to let existence speak for itself. And in its voice, he hears no command, no instruction, only invitation. When storms come, he does not seek shelter immediately. He stands beneath the rain and lets it soak through him. When night falls without stars, he does not wish for dawn. He learns to see the beauty in darkness itself. He understands now that to resist reality is to reject the only place life ever happens. The world does not owe him comfort. It offers truth. And truth, though often silent, is always kind. There are moments when he wonders if he has truly changed, or if he has simply remembered something forgotten long ago. He suspects it is the latter. Beneath all the noise, beneath the ambition and fear, this stillness was always there, waiting. Perhaps everyone carries it, this secret center of calm, unnoticed because they are too busy looking outward. The man who walks alone no longer seeks to find meaning in the road ahead. Meaning is not hidden in the horizon. It is woven into each step, each breath, each quiet pause between heartbeat. The more he lets go, the more complete he becomes. And so, he keeps walking. Not as an act of purpose, not as a pursuit of wisdom, but as a simple expression of life moving through him. The wind carries him forward, the earth supports him, The sky unfolds above him, and somewhere between those infinite spaces, he realizes that he has never been walking alone at all.